Desde la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada, en Bogotá, Colombia, transmite UMNG Radio. UMNG Radio. Una emisora alternativa, cultural e independiente. Desde la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada. Esta es UMNG Radio.
Tune in and speak up. Hello, English learners. Want to learn something interesting whilst having fun? Welcome to Tune In and Speak Up, the podcast where you'll get to know this beautiful language in depth. Each week, we'll dive into exciting topics, share practical tips, and tell you fascinating English language stories. So whether you're studying, going to work, or just relaxing, connect, listen, and let's make English part of your world. Wherever you are, whenever you want, just hit play, tune in and listen up. Tune in to UMNG Radio every Tuesday from 11 a.m. till noon. Don't just learn English, live it.
Okay, good morning and hello everyone. Welcome back to Tune In and Speak Up, the podcast from Universidad Militar Nueva Granada, where we explore English and we use it as a window to explore ideas, technologies, and cultural phenomena that shape the world we live in. I'm Jorge Bermudez, teacher of English at the Department of Multicultural Studies at UMNG, part of the School of Education and Humanities, and I'm very happy to welcome you to the fourth season. Today we have our first episode, and I'm also happy that you're here because today we're going to examine a habit so ordinary that most of us rarely stop to think about, despite the fact that it occupies a significant part of our daily lives. We're going to answer a very important question. Why can't we stop scrolling? Okay, let's go to our intro. Why can't we stop scrolling? Imagine this familiar situation. You unlock your phone to reply to a message, but a notification catches your attention. Then a video appears. Then another one follows, and before you realize it, 20 or 30 minutes have disappeared without any clear memory of how you spent them. This experience has become so common that it almost feels natural, yet it raises an important question. Why is it so difficult to stop? Why do our fingers continue moving almost automatically across a screen even when we know we have other things to do? The answer is far more interesting than simple lack of self-control, because this story is not really about phones at all. It is about human nature. Long before smartphones existed, our ancestors evolved brains that were designed to search for new information, pay attention to unexpected events, and remain alert to anything that could improve their chances of survival. Those ancient mechanisms now operate in a world that no previous generation has ever experienced, a world where information never ends. Algorithms learn our preferences, and millions of pieces of content compete every second for one of the most valuable resources we possess, our attention. In today's episode, we will explore the hidden science behind our digital habits by examining why our brains are attracted to novelty, what dopamine actually does, how social media platforms are designed to keep us engaged, why infinite scrolling was invented, how algorithms learn to predict our behavior, and what consequences all of these may have for our ability to focus and reflect. More importantly, we will discuss how we can build a healthier relationship with technology without treating it as an enemy. Because these same digital tools also allow us to learn languages, connect with people across continents, and even share this very podcast. So, if possible, place your phone somewhere out of reach for the next 45 minutes. Take a moment to be fully present and join me as we explore one of the most influential and perhaps most invisible habits of modern life, the endless act of scrolling. And that takes us to our first segment. Humans were never designed for endless information. To understand why it is so difficult to stop scrolling, we must travel far back in time, long before smartphones, computers, or even books existed. For most of human history, information was not abundant but incredibly scarce. People did not wake up to dozens of notifications or endless headlines competing for their attention. Instead, their understanding of the world was limited to what they could observe directly, what other people could teach them, and the stories passed down from one generation to the next. Imagine living 20,000 years ago. There were no libraries, no search engines, and no social media platforms. News traveled slowly because people themselves traveled slowly. In that world, every piece of information was valuable because it could directly influence a person's chances of survival. Knowing where food could be found, identifying dangerous animals, understanding the seasons, or paying attention to the behavior of other people could literally mean the difference between life and death. This is one of the most important ideas to remember throughout today's episode. The human brain evolved to seek information. Our brains constantly scan the environment looking for signals that might be useful. Is there danger nearby? Is there an opportunity here? Is there something new I should know? We do this so naturally that we rarely notice it, yet this process influences countless decisions we make every day. For thousands of years, this system worked remarkably well because information had natural limits. When conversations ended, silence returned. When stories were finished, people moved on to other activities. Human beings evolved in a world full of stopping points. Then everything began to accelerate. Writing systems emerged, followed by books, newspapers, radio, television, computers, and eventually the internet. Today, smartphones place a global network of information directly into our pockets. If we compare human evolution to a 24-hour day, smartphones would have appeared only a few seconds before midnight. In other words, our biology has had almost no time to adapt. This mismatch between ancient brains and modern technology may explain many of the challenges we experience today. Researchers in evolutionary psychology, including David Buss, have argued that many psychological mechanisms evolved to solve the problems faced by our ancestors, not the problems created by digital environments. Today, information no longer has natural boundaries. There is always another article to read, another video to watch, another message to answer, and another recommendation waiting to appear. For the first time in human history, people can access an almost unlimited supply of information every hour of every day. This is an extraordinary achievement, but abundance can also create new problems. Human beings evolved to search for information, but we did not evolve to manage an endless supply of it. Our attention is limited, and when that limit collides with a world designed to provide infinite stimulation, tension inevitably appears. Perhaps this is why scrolling can feel so automatic. When you pick up your phone, your brain is not doing anything abnormal. In many ways, it is doing exactly what evolution taught it to do: search, explore, and remain alert for new information. The problem is that evolution never prepared us for a device capable of delivering thousands of novel experiences before breakfast. Understanding this can be surprisingly liberating because it changes the question we ask ourselves. Instead of saying, "Why do I have such poor self control?" we can ask a more useful question: what happens when an ancient brain encounters a world with no off switch? And that brings us to the next part of our story, because one of the reasons our brains are so vulnerable to endless scrolling has to do with a powerful force that has guided human behavior for thousands of years: our attraction to anything new. And that takes us to our next segment: the brain loves novelty. Now that we understand that human beings evolved to search for information, we can explore another crucial piece of the puzzle: our attraction to novelty. This may explain a large part of why scrolling has become such a powerful habit in modern life. If someone wanted to design a system capable of capturing human attention for long periods of time, one of the most effective strategies would be surprisingly simple: provide an endless supply of new things to discover. But what exactly is novelty? Novelty refers to anything unfamiliar, unexpected, or different from what we have already experienced. Throughout human evolution, paying attention to new things often provided important advantages. A new source of food, a new route to travel, or an unusual sound in the environment could mean either opportunity or danger. As a result, our brains developed systems that automatically prioritize new information. You can observe this in everyday life. Imagine that you're reading quietly and suddenly hear an unusual noise outside. Your attention immediately shifts toward the sound because your brain has learned that unexpected events may be important. This is not a flaw, it is an ancient survival mechanism. The challenge is that modern digital environments have learned how to activate this mechanism continuously. Every time we open a social media application, we encounter a constant stream of novelty. A photograph is followed by a video, a news story by a humorous clip, and a sports highlight by a cooking tutorial. The content changes rapidly, and every new item carries the possibility of being interesting or rewarding. What makes this process especially powerful is uncertainty. Before we scroll, we do not know what will appear next. It might be something forgettable, or it might instantly capture our attention. That uncertainty turns every moment of the thumb into a small act of anticipation. Psychologists call this variable reward, a system in which rewards are delivered unpredictably rather than consistently. One of the most common examples is a slot machine in a casino. People never know exactly when a reward will appear, and that uncertainty itself encourages them to continue. Social media platforms operate according to a similar principle. Not every post is interesting, but users keep scrolling because they know that something engaging will eventually appear. This creates a cycle that many of us immediately recognize. You scroll, you evaluate, you decide whether something is worth your attention. Then you scroll again, and before you realize it, a significant amount of time has passed. Unlike activities that require deep concentration, scrolling demands very little mental effort. Your brain rapidly consumes small fragments of information while continuously searching for the next potentially rewarding experience. This also helps explain why many people instinctively reach for their phones during moments of inactivity. Waiting in line, riding public transportation, or simply sitting quietly can suddenly feel uncomfortable. In previous generations, these moments often involved daydreaming or observing the world around them. Today, many of those spaces have been replaced by immediate access to digital stimulation. Researchers have expressed concern that this constant availability of content may reduce our tolerance for boredom. Yet, boredom has historically played an important role in creativity because it encourages reflection, imagination, and spontaneous thought. Studies on mind wandering suggest that these quiet moments are linked to creativity, planning, and self reflection. Of course, novelty itself is not the enemy. Human curiosity has driven scientific discoveries, artistic innovations, and technological progress throughout history. The challenge appears when this healthy biological tendency encounters technologies specifically designed to exploit it. For the first time in history, billions of people carry devices capable of generating an endless stream of new experiences at any hour of the day. Evolution prepared us to deal with scarcity, not abundance. Our brains were never designed to say, I have seen enough new things for today. As a result, we can become trapped in a paradox. We continue searching for something satisfying. Yet, because there is always another option waiting, satisfaction can become harder to achieve. And while novelty may explain why we begin to scroll, another powerful force helps explain why we continue. That force lives inside our brains in the form of a chemical that has become one of the most misunderstood words in contemporary culture: dopamine. And that takes us to our third segment. Dopamine is not what most people think. At this point, we have learned two important things. Human beings evolved to search for information, and our brains are naturally attracted to novelty. But there is another piece of the puzzle that has become one of the most discussed and misunderstood concepts in conversations about social media: dopamine. You have probably heard people say things like, I'm addicted to dopamine, or social media gives us dopamine hits. These expressions are common, but they oversimplify a much more complex process. If we want to understand why scrolling can become such a powerful habit, we need to understand what dopamine actually does. For many years, dopamine was described as the brain's pleasure chemical, but neuroscientists now know that this explanation is incomplete. Dopamine is more closely associated with motivation, learning, anticipation, and the pursuit of goals. In simple terms, dopamine often has more to do with wanting something than with enjoying it. Imagine that someone offers you your favorite dessert. Before taking the first bite, your brain already begins to anticipate the experience. That sense of expectation involves dopamine. In fact, scientists have discovered that the brain can sometimes release more dopamine while expecting a reward than while receiving it. Now, think about your phone. Every time you unlock the screen, you enter a world of possibilities. Maybe someone sent you a message. Maybe there is an interesting video waiting for you. Maybe there is a breaking news or an unexpected recommendation. The important thing is that you do not know what you will find, and your brain responds to that uncertainty. Every notification becomes a small mystery, every refresh a new opportunity, and every scroll an invitation to continue searching. You're not reacting to a guaranteed reward. You are reacting to the possibility of a reward. Researchers often distinguish between two concepts, liking and wanting. Liking refers to the pleasure we experience, while wanting refers to the motivation that drives us to pursue something. These two processes are not always the same. Sometimes people continue wanting something even when they no longer enjoy it as much as before. Research by neuroscientists such as Kent Berridge has been fundamental in explaining this distinction. This may sound familiar if you think about your own social media habits. Have you ever opened an application automatically, looked at a few posts, and realized that nothing was particularly interesting, only to open the same application again a short time later? If so, you are not alone. The explanation is not necessarily a lack of discipline. Instead, your brain may have learned to anticipate potential rewards, and that expectation itself becomes part of the habit. Over time, repetition turns deliberate actions into automatic behaviors. We check our phones while waiting for an elevator, during meals, or just before going to sleep. This happens because habit formation is one of the brain's greatest strengths. Habits help us conserve mental energy by automating repetitive actions. The problem is that the brain does not automatically distinguish between helpful and unhelpful habits. If a behavior is repeated often enough, it may eventually become automatic. Modern technologies make this especially easy because they are always available. They fit in our pockets, accompany us during meals, and sit beside our beds at night. Very few technologies in human history have been so accessible. It is important, however, not to equate social media use with substance addiction. Researchers continue to debate the appropriate terminology, although many agree that some digital platforms can encourage compulsive patterns of use, particularly when they are intentionally designed to maximize engagement. Perhaps the most important conclusion is that our brains are not malfunctioning. They are doing exactly what evolution prepared them to do: seek opportunities, anticipate rewards, and repeat behaviors that appear beneficial. The challenge is that these ancient mechanisms are now interacting with technologies that have become extraordinarily effective at capturing our attention. And that takes us to the invention of infinite scroll. This is the man responsible for this habit. By now, we know that our brains evolved to search information, that we're naturally attracted to novelty, and that dopamine motivates us to pursue potential rewards. But if these tendencies have existed for thousands of years, why does scrolling feel so powerful today? Part of the answer lies in a specific design decision called infinite scroll. Today, this feature is so common that many people assume it has always existed. We move through social media feeds, news websites, and video platforms without ever questioning why the content never seems to end. Yet, infinite scroll is actually a relatively recent invention. In 2006, software designer Asa Raskin, here in the picture, introduced the concept as a way to simplify the user experience. Instead of clicking a button that said next page, new content would automatically appear as users reach the bottom of the screen. The idea was convenient, efficient, and easy to use. And that was precisely the problem. Before smartphones became dominant, most forms of media had natural stopping points. Books ended. Newspapers had a limited number of pages. Television programs finished after a certain amount of time. Even early websites required users to click on another page to continue. These interruptions were more important than they seem because they created moments of reflection. They allowed us to ask a simple question: do I want to continue? Infinite scroll removes those moments. In psychology, this is known as removing friction, the small obstacles that slow us down and encourage us to think before acting. Digital designers often eliminate friction because smoother experiences tend to keep users engaged for longer periods of time. The result is that the burden of self-control changes entirely to the user. Instead of external boundaries helping us to stop, we must rely only on our own discipline. The difficulty, however, is that our brains are already predisposed to seek novelty and continue searching for interesting information. Asking an ancient brain to voluntarily stop an endless stream of stimulation is much harder than it sounds. Years later, Asa Raskin publicly expressed concern about the influence this design had acquired and became an advocate for more ethical technology design. This also reveals something larger about today's digital world. Many platforms are built around a single objective: keeping users engaged for as long as possible. In what scholars call the attention economy, human attention has become an extremely valuable resource because the longer users remain on a platform, the more opportunities companies have to monetize their engagement. This does not mean that technology companies are trying to harm users. The reality is more complex. Many are responding to economic incentives that reward engagement above all else. An infinite scroll is extraordinarily effective. Think about how easy it is to leave a movie theater. A movie ends, the lights come on, and everyone leaves. Social media offers no such signal. There is no message saying, "You have consumed enough information for today." Before you realize it, a quick check of your phone may have turned into 30 minutes of uninterrupted scrolling. Psychologists have linked this to a loss of temporal awareness, a state in which people become less conscious of how much time is passing. Perhaps the most important lesson is that our environments shape our behavior more than we often realize. Once we understand that design influences behavior, we can intentionally create boundaries and restore some of the stopping points that technology has removed. But there is another invisible force working behind the scenes. Because while infinite scroll keeps the content flowing, something else decides which content appears in front of us in the first place. That invisible force is the algorithm. And that takes us to our next segment. Your algorithm knows you better than you think. In the third episode of this season, we will be talking about algorithms in a more explanatory way. There is another powerful actor working behind the scenes, one that quietly shapes almost every digital experience we have every day. That actor is the algorithm. The word has become extremely common, yet many people are still unsure about what an algorithm actually is. In simple terms, an algorithm is a set of instructions designed to solve a problem or make a prediction. Algorithms are not new. Recipes, mathematical formulas, and even directions for traveling from one place to another can be considered simple algorithms. What makes modern algorithms different is their extraordinary ability to process enormous amounts of information. Every time you interact with a digital platform, you leave behind small pieces of behavioral data. The system may observe how long you watch a video, which topics capture your attention, which posts you ignore, and even the time of day you're most active online. Individually, these actions seem insignificant, but together they begin to reveal patterns. Little by little, the system learns. Then it makes predictions. And those predictions gradually become more accurate. Algorithms were originally designed to help us navigate overwhelming amounts of information. In many ways, they act like personalized librarians, recommending music, educational videos, recipes, documentaries, or language learning resources that match our interests. This can be extremely useful. However, there is one important detail we must never forget. The algorithm's primary goal is not necessarily to educate us, tell us the truth, or make us happier. In many cases, its main objective is much simpler: to keep your attention. This distinction matters because what captures our attention is not always but what benefits us the most. Human beings are naturally drawn to emotionally charged content. Stories that surprise us, anger us, frighten us, or excite us often generate more engagement than information that is calm or nuanced. As a result, algorithms may unintentionally amplify material that triggers strong emotional reactions because those reactions keep people on a platform for longer periods of time. Algorithms do not hate us, love us, or judge us. They simply optimize for the objectives they have been given. If their task is to maximize engagement, they will become increasingly efficient at identifying the kinds of content that keep users interested. And they are becoming very good at it. Over time, algorithms build a model not of our personality, but of our habits. And habits can reveal a great deal about a person. This creates a feedback loop. The algorithm observes our behavior, recommends similar content, gathers more information, and then refines its predictions. The cycle repeats itself again and again. At first, this personalization feels incredibly convenient. Information comes to us instead of requiring us to search for it. But this convenience also raises an important question. What happens when we stop choosing and simply accept whatever appears in front of us? Some researchers worry that excessive personalization may reduce our exposure to different perspectives. If we are constantly shown information that matches our existing interest, we may encounter fewer ideas that challenge our assumptions. Scholars have described related phenomena using terms such as filter bubbles and echo chambers. Although their exact impact remains a subject of debate, what is clear, however, is that algorithms strongly influence the pathways through which people access information. Imagine two people opening the same social media application at exactly the same moment. One person sees travel videos and language lessons, while the other sees sports highlights and political commentary. They are using the same platform, but they are experiencing two completely different digital worlds. In many ways, we are all living inside slightly different versions of the internet. This personalization is neither entirely good nor entirely bad. Algorithms can help us learn new skills, discover valuable educational content, and connect with people around the world. At the same time, they can reinforce habits, intensify distraction, and consume enormous amounts of our attention if we use them passively. That is why digital literacy has become such an important skill in the 21st century. Today, being digitally literate means more than knowing how to use a device. It also means understanding how these systems work. The goal is not to fear algorithms. The goal is to become conscious of them. Because when we understand that recommendations are predictions rather than objective truths, we become active participants instead of passive consumers. And that leads us to our final question. What happens to our minds when we spend years living inside environments specifically designed to capture our attention? To answer that, we must explore what constant digital stimulation may be doing to one of our most valuable cognitive abilities, our capacity to pay attention. And that takes us to our next segment. What happens to our attention? Now that we understand how algorithms compete for our attention, we can address one of the most important questions of this episode. What is all of this doing to our ability to pay attention? Around the world, teachers, employers, and even parents have noticed a similar pattern. Many people report that concentration for long periods of time feels more difficult than it used to. Reading long texts, completing complex tasks, or staying focused without checking a phone can be challenging. If this sounds familiar, it is important to understand something. This is not simply an individual problem, nor is it evidence that people are becoming lazy. Human attention is influenced by many factors, including sleep, stress, workload, physical activity, and digital habits. Social media is only one piece of a much larger puzzle, but researchers are increasingly interested in how constant digital stimulation may affect our ability to sustain concentration over time. To understand the challenge, we must first recognize a fundamental fact: our attention is limited. Although we often speak about multitasking as a skill, neuroscientists have shown that the brain is not particularly good at performing multiple demanding tasks at once. Most of the time, what we call multitasking is actually task switching. Imagine that you're writing an essay. A notification appears, so you check your phone. Then you return to your work only to remember another message a few minutes later. Each interruption may be brief, but every transition requires the brain to readjust. This constant switching has a cost. The more frequently we interrupt ourselves, the more mental energy we consume, and over time, this can leave us feeling exhausted even when we have not completed especially difficult work. Researchers have consistently found that frequent interruptions reduce efficiency and increase feelings of fatigue. Perhaps an analogy can help. Imagine trying to read a novel while someone turns the lights on and off every 30 seconds. Technically, you could continue reading, but the experience would become frustrating and exhausting. In many ways, our digital lives create a similar environment. Notifications interrupt conversations, messages interrupt reading, applications interrupt one another. Our attention is constantly being pulled in different directions. This matters because many of the activities that enrich our lives require deep attention. Reading a complex book, learning a language, writing an essay, solving a problem, or having a meaningful conversation all depend on our ability to remain focused for extended periods of time. Fortunately, attention is not a fixed trait. It is a skill, and like a muscle, it becomes stronger with practice. Researchers also caution against simplistic claims that modern attention spans are permanently shrinking. Human cognition is far more complex than a single number can capture. What scientists do agree on is that the environments we inhabit influence how we practice the skill of concentrating. Perhaps an even more surprising consequence of constant stimulation is the way it changes our relationship with boredom. Today, many people instinctively reach for their phones during any moment of inactivity. Researchers have linked mind wandering to planning, problem solving, and self reflection. Those unexpected ideas that appear while taking a shower or staring out of a window are not accidents. They are part of a valuable mental process. The challenge is that if every quiet moment is immediately filled with digital content, those opportunities become less frequent. This does not mean that technology is harmful. Technology has transformed education, communication, and access to knowledge in extraordinary ways. The challenge lies in balance. And that takes us to our closing reflection. As we come to the end of today's episode, I would like to leave you with a thought that may be more important than any scientific concept we have discussed. Although we often speak about technology as if it were something external to us, the truth is that it has become deeply intertwined with the way we think, learn, communicate, and even perceive ourselves. For the first time in human history, billions of people carry devices that can instantly connect them to almost every corner of the planet and give them access to more information than previous generations could have accumulated in an entire lifetime. This is an extraordinary achievement, but every technological revolution has required humanity to develop new forms of responsibility. Today, social media and algorithm driven platforms are transforming something especially valuable: our relationship with attention itself. Perhaps that is why this episode was never really about smartphones or scrolling. It was about understanding what it means to be human in a world that has changed faster than our biology has been able to adapt. Our brains are not malfunctioning. They are doing exactly what evolution prepared them to do. Don't forget that. Searching for information, responding to novelty, and anticipating rewards. This does not mean that we should reject technology. On the contrary, technology allows us to learn new languages, connect with people across continents, and share knowledge in ways previous generations could never have imagined. The goal, therefore, is not to disconnect from the modern world, but to participate in it more intentionally. Perhaps the most important question we can ask ourselves is no longer, how much time do I spend on my phone? But rather, who is deciding where my attention goes? Because if we are not making that decision ourselves, someone else may already be making it for us. Okay, and this is the end of our episode number 1 of the 4th season. Thank you so much for spending this time with me on Tune In and Speak Up, the podcast from Universidad Militar Nueva Granada. I hope today's episode helped you understand that behind a simple movement of the thumb lies an extraordinary story involving evolution, neuroscience, psychology, economics, and the challenges of modern society. Until next time, keep practicing your English, keep asking questions, and remember, the more we understand the world around us, the more intentionally we can live within it. See you in the next episode. Leonardo, thank you very much. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a good week.
Tune in and speak up. Hello, English learners. Want to learn something interesting whilst having fun? Welcome to Tune In and Speak Up, the podcast where you'll get to know this beautiful language in depth. Each week, we'll dive into exciting topics, share practical tips, and tell you fascinating English language stories. So whether you're studying, going to work, or just relaxing, connect, listen, and let's make English part of your world. Wherever you are, whenever you want, just hit play, tune in and listen up. Tune in to U28 Radio every Tuesday from 11 a.m. till noon. Don't just learn English, live it.